welcome to Faith in Haverhill. I'm your host, Pastor Rick Harrington, pastor at First Baptist Church in Haverhill. A time to get together to talk about ministry and ethics and current events. And I want to introduce you to my newest guest here, Pastor Dave Hammer. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show. Well, we always like to start with just a time in which you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, your wife, and kids, and that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I'm now married to my wife Amy, and we have 4 kids who are ages 4, 6, 8, and 10. And Amy homeschools them right now.
Okay. So busy house.
Yep. Yep. It's pretty busy. And we've been married for 12 years.
Okay.
And I'm originally from Syracuse, New York, and she's originally from Connecticut, although she moved around a little bit.
Okay.
And we've been nearby Haverhill. We're in Danville, a town just over the border in New Hampshire. We've been there for just about 7 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd you guys meet?
Let's see. We were both living in Wheaton, Illinois, a suburb to the west of Chicago. I went out there to work as a software consultant after college. She had done some time teaching school in Japan and wanted to do a degree in teaching English as a second language. And so she came to Wheaton to do grad school for that degree. And we were part of the same church, and we met there, yeah.
Okay, was that college church?
Yeah, we were at College Church in Wheaton,
All right,
Illinois.
was that when Kent Hughes was the pastor?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, neat. Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Dave. So, you were a Christian at the time that you were at Wheaton. So how did you become a Christian? Because you didn't, if I remember right, you didn't grow up in a Christian home.
Yeah, yeah. So, growing up in Syracuse, New York, my father was his family's Jewish, and but not religious Jewish, Jewish mainly culturally. And then my mother's side of the family is Greek, and Greek-Orthodox was their religion, and I grew up going to the Greek-Orthodox Church. Okay. And but the faith in God was not a big part of my life or of my immediate family. I mean, as far as, having a day-to-day relationship with God and, praying together, reading the Bible, that was not, I think we're basically a good moral family. But what happened was when my parents divorced when I was in middle school, my mom started seeking just, what she could hang on to and what truth was, and particularly wondering who God is. And as she looked, I know she met several times with the priest of the Greek-Orthodox Church, but she ended up talking to a guy who was the soccer coach of my youth soccer league, and who was our neighbor, who also was a pastor of a church. And his name's Jeremy Jackson. And so we started visiting their church. And I can remember that from the first time entering there. Now, the church we'd come from was a very ornate Greek Orthodox church where, you look around and it's obviously a very religious place. But we started going to this other church where the Bible was central. And actually, when you look around the church, it didn't look like it wasn't a religious place at all. It met in a rented out school gym. Okay. But what was different about the place right away was they were focused on who God is and what He says in the Bible, and the issue was, how are you going to respond to this God who wants to know you and wants to have a relationship with you? And I remember at first feeling, so I'm about in middle school now. Okay. And I can remember feeling very uncomfortable going there. It was so easy to go into the Greek Orthodox Church and, go and leave, and you go on with your life. Here was a place where we were being gently challenged and presented with, here's what God says to you, and what do you have to say about this? And so like I said, it was very uncomfortable. It was like being kind of laid bare, week after week in this place. But the thing was, I believed. I believed what was being said there, and we didn't have other people in our lives besides at this church where they had kind of an ongoing day-to-day relationship with Jesus, and so it was just culturally very different. I think Syracuse, New York, is probably a lot like New England is now. It was a very secular place. Although there might have been a fair number of churchgoers, day-to-day life was pretty secular. And so this was very different, but our lives really changed from that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old were you at the time? You said
So
middle school?
let's say I was 12 or
12
so,
years
or 13, maybe 8th grade, I'm going to say.
Okay. And so, that was you and your mom went there?
My mother, and she's bringing my brothers. You know, my parents had just recently divorced, so she's bringing me and my younger brothers, my 3 younger brothers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And what did your dad think about all that?
And my take on it, it was pretty interesting, was that as we became, from the outside world would think, oh, the Hammer family is all of a sudden becoming very religious. He was coming along with our family previously to the Greek-Orthodox Church, and he from a secular Jewish background. And as we became more serious about God, he became more serious about God at that Greek-Orthodox Church.
Okay.
And even today, over 25 years later, he's a serious Eastern Orthodox. He's switched to a different church where the whole church is in English, where previously at the Greek church, a fair amount of it's in Greek. So he became serious about that faith and then moved to another Orthodox church in the city, and he's serious about that faith now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's not Greek?
And
So
he is not Greek. He's totally Jewish.
Okay.
Or, culturally.
Cultural Jewish.
Yeah.
Wow. Excellent. Wow. So you're young, and you got a budding faith at around 12 there.
Yeah.
And then you hit college, and where'd you end up going to college?
I ended up going to 4 different colleges.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a really hard time in my life. And I went to Fordham University in the Bronx, went back home to community college, went off to Wheaton College in Illinois, a Christian school, came back home to community college, and ended up graduating from Syracuse University.
Okay. All right.
And at that time, what I didn't know, I just thought, I'm unhappy at this school, I'll try another one. What I didn't realize is that I was actually very depressed at that time, and I was kind of running away looking for happiness, not realizing that, there was stuff going on with me, in my own heart, in my own mind, emotionally, psychologically, that I needed to just, deal with. And so that was a really rough time. But yeah.
At that time, would you say you were struggling with your faith in Christ
Yeah.
too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
good. And so at some point, Dave, you felt the call to ministry.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are kind of curious about that. I know it's a question I get a lot: is how do you know when you're called to be a pastor? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. I could imagine thinking that it would be some very supernatural, miraculous,
The clouds
sublime,
part and some voice comes down.
But it wasn't like that at all for me. It probably was a lot more like a typical person finding their calling in whatever work they do. Mm-hmm. So I was a software consultant. I had a degree in management information systems. And I was involved in a church in Wheaton, Illinois. And as I was involved there volunteering, I just started getting a little bit more involved, and then a little bit more involved. And the pastor would say, why don't you try this? Well, why don't you lead a study, lead a Sunday school? Why don't you organize this event? And one by one, I just got more and more involved until finally the pastor said, what would you think about resigning from software, going full time to seminary? Mm-hmm. And it just sounded. It's just what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. There was no parting of the sky or anything. I can remember when I went back home to Syracuse, probably when I was in seminary, and was telling old friends that I was going to be a pastor. And yeah, they just didn't know how to place that, because it wasn't something that our friends grew up to do. Mm-hmm. But it just kind of fit for me. Yeah.
Good. Sometimes I tell people, when they ask, how do you know when you're called, that part of it is that inner drive, that passion. Mm. If you don't have a passion, you don't have a desire for it, it's probably not a call.
Yeah.
But also confirmation from others, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you started to see that in your life.
Yeah.
Others saying, Dave, I think you have a gifting in this area when it comes to ministry.
Yeah.
And then some effectiveness, that are you able to minister well? Are you seeing any fruit from your ministry?
Yeah.
And that when those 3 things kind of come together, that kind of confirms a call. That it's usually not an audible voice or something like that comes the call to ministry.
Yeah.
So, but certainly your local church and your local church pastor and his encouragement. That's a big deal. That he's telling you, I think you should pursue this.
Yes. Yeah, that's what it was like. Yeah.
So you got a whole world full of seminaries, and you chose Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and I always remember that because that's where I graduated from. In fact, you and I were there at the same time. We didn't know each other too well back then. We ended up here together in New England. But what made you choose Trinity?
You know, I was looking at a couple different schools, and the big thing, well, it was, you know, it was a strong school, and it spiritually and academically, but the biggest thing was that it was close by. And because I was really involved in the church there in Wheaton, and I'd be able to commute up, which is a little bit of a commute, but it just made sense because it was close by.
Oh, did you stay involved at college?
So I commuted the whole time, which ended up being like 45 minutes to an hour, you know, each way. But it was worth it to just stay involved there in Wheaton. Yeah.
Were you ever on staff?
Yeah, and then I came on staff at the church in Wheaton, and I had various interim positions. I was the interim youth pastor and the interim single adults pastor at this large, you know, 10 pastor church. You know, it's like, you know, an 1,800 member church. So I did various positions there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Wow. So we'll get to Danville Baptist in a little bit, but from a very large church to a fairly small church comparatively.
Yeah.
But your time at seminary, would you say, how well did that prepare you for ministry? Was it a valuable time? Was it a worthwhile time?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a rigorous time in terms of studying the Bible and the biblical languages and and theology and missions. And at the same time, when I got out here and was my first work as a head pastor, I felt like I was starting all over. I felt like I was like in kindergarten of learning real-time ministry, and I don't think that was any lack in my training. I just think the real world is very complex. So yeah, so it was a great seminary experience, but there's so much more to learn. You know.
Yeah. I found it at Trinity particularly, but I think seminaries in generally prepare you well for some of the theological questions in that. But the basics of how to do ministry in a day-to-day, you got to learn in the fire of experience. You know, just of the day-to-day of getting involved, and there's nothing like time and experience to kind of work you through that. But so how did you end up in Danville? How did you end up in New England and particularly in Hampshire?
Well, we went out to Spokane, Washington, for a couple of years after Wheaton, and where I was the youth pastor, and then we wanted to be back out in the Northeast, where we're both from. When we'd come back for the holidays, we'd take these epic day-long journeys, going from all to all, taking various flights and everything, and with our family, we just felt like we want to be closer to home. And our head pastor at the church where I was at said, you know what, you'd be really better as a head pastor than as a youth pastor. And so it just seemed like time to look for something. And we were looking at various openings, and we interviewed out here, and it seemed like a good fit. And it's about 6 hours from where I grew up. And so it's what we were wanting, and it just seems like a good fit. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. I know that, so you're not officially a Haverhill guy, but you do spend a good amount of time in Haverhill, coming down, which is good. And but because Haverhill's in an interesting place, it's right on the border, with Plastow right there. So even though we're Massachusetts people here in Haverhill, we're not really Bostonians. We're not big city people. We're kind of on the border there, and so we have actually a number of people that come from Plastow and even Danville to First Baptist. And do you guys have some Massachusetts people that maybe come to Danville?
No, I don't think.
No, okay, all right. So it only goes one way. It doesn't go.
Maybe. Yeah.
But tell us about what's it like? What's the culture like in southern New Hampshire in ministry?
Yeah, the culture of southern New Hampshire. Well, our town and the surrounding towns are very small towns, and they're kind of like commuter towns. I think at one time maybe more of the people worked locally, but now a large number of the people are people who commute to a bigger city, whether it's a Boston or a Portsmouth or other places like that. And so there's not a lot of local culture, local community, because it's like a bedroom community, I hear it called. Okay. People kind of live and work elsewhere, and then they come home. And up in Danville, where I am, they own a fair amount of land. The minimum is going to be 2 acres, but they might own 5, 10 more acres. And so people live fairly independent lives. Like, for example, I grew up in a city with sidewalks, and you were always walking down the sidewalk going to the store, going to get ice cream, wherever. There's no sidewalks in Danville, so you're not going to be walking around. To me, just that one feature says a lot about the town, that there are no sidewalks.
Yeah. In a sense, you go to a place like Danville to not live too close to your neighbor.
Yeah,
get a,
right,
get a
yeah.
little space. So,
Yeah.
which must be interesting in terms of ministry.
Yeah.
Well, before we get there though, so you are the pastor of Danville Baptist Church. Where's that located?
Well, it's in Danville, New Hampshire. You know.
Yeah. I mean, what's the address? And maybe some people are familiar with the area.
Oh, I think it's 226 Main Street in Danville. Danville just has a gas station and a town hall and a post office. If you drove down Main Street, you couldn't miss the church because there's not really many other official buildings on it, you know, non-homes, you know, non-residential. So, yeah.
And you guys live there basically right on the church property?
Yeah, we live around the corner from the church there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any idea what the population of Danville is?
Yeah, it's about 4,000.
Okay, so yeah, much smaller. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And tell us about the church. What's the culture like at the church?
Well, I think it fairly reflects the city, the town. You know, people from different ages, different type of careers. You know, some are college educated, some are more blue collar type, and and people of all ages. So there's some young kids and retirees and yeah.
And it's a smaller church, or
Yeah, it's a smaller church. Yeah.
But well, like 100,
Like
150?
like 90 people.
90 people, yeah. So, which for a town of 4,000 is
Yeah.
actually probably the biggest, maybe the biggest Protestant church in Danville.
Well, there's no other churches in Danville.
There's no other churches at all.
No.
It's the only church.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Danville,
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And as I understand, it's gone through a lot of change and transition with you there.
Yeah.
Describe that process of coming there, not straight out of seminary, because you did have some experience, but your first lead role and kind of growing along with the church and having the church kind of change over time with you there.
Yeah. Well, when I got there, the demographics of the church did not parallel the town. The town is largely young families, and the church when I got there was primarily retirees. And so we were just kind of working with each other to say, what could we do better, and how can we serve families better, and so it's I don't know how to describe that process, but and at the same time we're trying to get along well and love each other within the church as we try and serve the community as well. So there's all the it's very complex with all the different relationships and things going on. I don't know how to describe, all that has happened and the dynamics of that, but yeah.
The one thing is that I remember hearing, and I think it's certainly true, is that ministry is messy. It's never clear cut. You kind of come in with straight out of seminary with this big vision of what you want to see happen, and maybe you have your goals, and you want to see this happen in 5 years, this happen in 10 years, and then you hit the ground, and it's not quite like that. Things go a little differently than that. So.
That's true.
Yeah. How's outreach going? As we were just saying that, it's a little different than in Haverhill. I mean, we're on Main Street as well, but in Haverhill, about 60,000 people. People are literally walking in the door every day just to come in off the street for conversation or for whatever. Where in southern New Hampshire, kind of people are intentionally spread out, intentionally want to be left alone a lot of times. What's it like trying to meet your neighbors and reach out to your neighbors and minister to them and serve them?
I found it to be quite a challenge and quite a puzzle, and so we're just trying lots of different things, praying, and we're going to see what works. I mean, I think of it as something like, we're just trying to be creative and experiment. We haven't really found a way to connect with people yet, but we've done a variety of different things. Like, before Thanksgiving, we gave out 50 turkey dinners for people to cook at home. 50 turkeys with all the side dishes, and you just come and you pick them up, and so we did that and gave out all 50 meals, and we. And just a couple months before that, there was what's called our Old Home Day in our town. And we went over there and we worked it out with the Old Home Day committee, where we're going to give out free lunches at that. And we're going to do hot dogs and drinks and chips and, for anyone that wants them. And we gave out 250 of those. So we try different things. And so we're just trying to show the town that we care. We care about people. We care about those who are hurting and vulnerable. And that God cares, too. At the same time, we haven't seen results of people coming to know God or join our church from that. So we're just trying to be faithful,
Yeah. A lot of things like that just take the time of continually,
Yeah.
over a long period. You become known as the church that helps people on Thanksgiving, and,
Yeah.
and that maybe 10 years, 5-10 years down the
Yeah.
line, you start to see fruit from
Yeah.
that type of thing. But
Yeah.
but I think it seems like just the courage of being able to walk to your neighbors, or like you just said, drive to your next door neighbor, and knock on the door and introduce yourself, or to bring over something over to them, and just to meet them. It's got to be a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how did they feel about the only church in town, the only Danville Baptist, the only church in Danville? How did they feel about having a younger pastor? Because I think, at least for New England, Dave, I think most people would see you and me and say, "Wow, you guys are pretty young for pastoral ministry." So, how well were you received as a young pastor?
I think for the most part, very well. I think one good thing about, mature Christians is that they try to be, accepting and gracious, and even cross-cultural. Even if they don't understand you, they try to, give you freedom to be different. And so I see a lot of that in our church. At the same time, I think there were some that, when little things weren't exactly the way that they had been used to, they took offense to that, and there were some challenging relationships. But overall, I think it was a pretty accepting. It's been a pretty accepting place.
Yeah. It's always difficult, I think, anytime you make change in a church, you're going to be, it's difficult. Because you have people who have been members of the church literally before you were born.
Yeah.
And for a lot of years, they're used to doing it a certain way. And so you always, particularly I think in New England, where there is a culture of traditionalism, it's a slow process of making changes, and a corporate process of talking to those around you and making sure people are on the same page and that kind of thing. So, how would you describe your Sunday service? What's the music style like, for example?
I would call it blended service. So we have guitars, and we have a guy on a drum, and a guy and a young lady on a violin, and someone else on a piano, and we play both contemporary and more traditional hymns as well.
Which has the effect sometimes of pleasing everybody or displeasing everybody, right? So, so depending on how flexible you are. But, so was that like that when you first arrived at the church, or has that changed over the last
I think we're becoming more contemporary.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So was there a praise team at all when you first started coming in?
Before, it was just vocalists and a piano.
Okay. All right. So that's been a development over time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes they call it the worship wars, where churches go through this of modernizing the worship, and there's pros and cons, and you got to know your church culture and what's best for them, what fits best for them, and then you got to know the broader culture and how do you minister well to the people in the community, so that they're not coming in and saying, "Well, this is a whole world. This whole world of music and everything is so foreign to me that I don't even know how to relate." So it's that balance. And it takes a while to kind of do that. So. How has your background in IT, has that helped you as a pastor? I was on your website, and it was one of the nicest church websites I've seen. So I've noticed for a small church in a small town in southern New Hampshire, you guys had one of the most updated and modern looking websites that I've seen for a church. So so that certainly seems to show some of the effect of your experience, Dave.
Yeah.
But has your background played a lot into ministry?
I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit, but I would think that probably most people our age are fairly savvy with doing some basic things on a computer. So I think my computer background mainly makes me not afraid to try some stuff, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a huge advantage over your average college-educated person today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I know that it certainly has changed the way people find a church. So if let's say a Christian family moves into Danville and they're looking for a church, it used to be you open up the newspaper or you open up the yellow pages and you try to find a church. Now you just go to Google. Churches Danville, and now you guys have the only, you guys are a monopoly basically in Danville, and that's how people find churches is through websites. So you're involved in social media and that kind of thing. Is that? I'm
not just personally. I do Facebook, but not as the church.
Not as a church. So
Yeah.
And where are you guys denominationally?
We're part of the American Baptist Church, as you guys, the same American Baptist Church denomination. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're dual affiliated at First Baptist, so we have
Oh.
but American Baptist and Southern Baptist Convention.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, which is I would guess we may be the only or one of the only churches in the country that has that dual affiliation, because
Yeah.
those denominations seem to be so
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But how's that gone with the denomination being part of the ABC?
Yeah. I think it's been going really well. There's a lot I could say. Let me think of what to bring out. When I came, well, first of all, the American Baptist Church is a denomination I would characterize as, they're a mainstream church, the mainstream denomination. I would say that they're pretty evangelical, and what I mean by that is, conservative, believing what the scriptures say and trying not to deviate from that. There are some regions of the American Baptist Church in America, especially Massachusetts, that I would consider to be liberal. There's very few of those. So when I came in, New Hampshire, Vermont region, I don't know who's going to be interested in this of your listeners, but is pretty evangelical, and that fits me, with what I believe. And it seems like even though the churches in Vermont and New Hampshire are not doing that well, it does seem like God is doing some things, reviving some churches up there. I think it's an exciting time, actually, for those churches. Okay. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned, you're right, a lot of people listening might say, I don't know anything about the ABC versus another denominational background, but certainly Baptists, though. When people hear Baptist, certain connotations come to mind.
Yeah.
And in that world of Baptist, which is very diverse,
Yeah.
the ABC kind of plays a role on the more moderate side of things, would you say?
Yeah.
So whereas Southern Baptist may be known for things, the fundamentalist side of things, no drinking, no smoking, no dancing. Not all Southern Baptist churches are like that, of course, but that is a culture that's found there. American Baptist, you would say, a little different, a little more open in those areas. But also theologically, though, whereas I think Southern Baptist is a little more firm on their authority of the Scriptures. American Baptist, you might find some freedom there, and maybe even a little too much for comfort for for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certainly for us as a church, it's been that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But you're ordained with the ABC?
Yes.
Okay. How'd the ordination council go and all that?
I think it all went fine. I wrote a paper, and for people that don't know what ordination is for us, and I'm not actually familiar in how it works for other denominations, but for us it's pretty simple that you write a paper that says your doctrinal beliefs, with key subjects like what do you believe about the Bible, who do you think God is, who do you think Jesus is, and so forth. And you turn that into this committee, and they okay it, and then you move forward, and then you meet before a larger group, and you read that paper, and people ask you questions, and then you interact, and then you leave, and they vote, do we want to ordain this person? Do we think God's calling this person to ministry? And they, for me, voted, and they voted yes, and come back in, and that's like the ordination. So basically the area churches and area pastors are affirming what they've seen God, what they think God is doing in your life, that He's calling you into this. Okay. And that's what that ordination process was, and it went well, yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
Yep.
So you're, the title Reverend comes with ordination, basically, typically. So not that you go around and say, I'm Reverend Dave.
Yeah, yeah.
Just thinking again of Southern New Hampshire, because I think it's, like I said, Haverhill's on the border, and so a lot of Haverhill people have, spend a lot of time in Southern New Hampshire. How are things right now? A lot of focus is on New Hampshire nationally because of politics.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, how do you feel like you or your people in your church are at this time they're just inundated with politics right now? Is that a topic of a lot of discussion, a lot of phone calls, a lot of things going on there? And so how's that affected the church?
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting you to come out in support of any candidate or anything like that, Dave. But just how's it like being in Southern New Hampshire?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm not used to it. It was new to me to come here to get a phone call, at least one phone call a day from people doing surveys.
Is that right? Okay.
And then receiving, flyers in the mail at a much higher frequency than I had experienced anywhere else. But I wouldn't say that the level of conversation of people that I know, that there's more conversation about politics than other places I've been.
Okay.
And as a church, we are the official stuff that we do as a church. We're not political. So I as far as what I do is when I preach and stuff. When I do ministry, I'm just teaching the Bible, and I'm not at all talking about politics. Yeah. Although what we talk about does relate to politics, I don't try to connect those dots.
Yeah, I think it's. I find it really important that, in some ways, particularly as a church, that we don't take a political stance on any issue. That we certainly don't endorse a candidate. Not that we're not open to those discussions. I don't know if you have those discussions. Certainly, within our church family, where people have questions. Because it's all over the news, it's all over their life right now, and they need some they're asking for some guidance and clarity. It's thinking through this, but I think it's important. I don't know if you agree that a pastor not really take a stand on a candidate that in some ways allows people to think through that. Maybe gives them the guidance to think through that, but then kind of leaves that open. So
makes sense.
Yeah, definitely could be a touchy subject. So I think there are certainly biblical principles that you would think through when you're thinking about politics. But certainly in Massachusetts it's not as much of an issue because it's politics in Massachusetts is pretty much decided, whereas New Hampshire tends to be the focus of the nation right now. So all right, good. All right. We're taping this, Dave, a week before Christmas. Actually, a week from today would be Christmas Eve. But it may not air until January. But nevertheless, Christmas, tell me a little bit, why is Christmas a big deal for churches?
Well, because first of all, it is as a country that has significant Christian roots. It's a big cultural event, Christmas, and that coincides with the fact that it's a huge event in the Bible and in Christian faith. So this is the celebration that all of God's promises and throughout Jewish history to do something big in the world, to make the world better, to rescue the world. And it was going to come through not just that he was going to intervene in a purely supernatural way, but that he was going to send someone, a person, to do it. And that person was born in Bethlehem and is Jesus. And so Christmas is celebrating that person's birth. I wouldn't say the total culmination of all that the Bible looks forward to in Jewish and also Christian hope, but it's kind of the beginning of that culmination that is going to continue to the cross, and then the resurrection, and then later when Jesus returns. But certainly the birth of Jesus, the Son of God becoming a man, is just huge for us. Yeah.
So for your church, for the Christian church, it's a high point of celebration. That we're celebrating the birth of Christ.
Yeah.
It also provides, I think, a great outreach and ministry opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of people come to church who normally wouldn't on Christmas. Do you find that to be the case at Danville?
Yeah. I think it's just generally true for us.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys find it an opportunity to kind of reach out to those people who are neighbors? And has that been?
Our numbers are a little bit inflated as we get closer to Christmas, and we hope that as they visit us, that they feel loved, and particularly that they experience just in that Sunday morning that they're with us, something of the reality of God, and hear from Him in a way that makes them would impact their lives. So that's
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think people are thinking about Christmas or thinking about Christ in ways maybe they wouldn't normally throughout the year. Easter's similar too, and I think it provides that opportunity, and they're open to looking for a church to be there on Christmas and that kind of thing. So, but Want to kind of change directions a little bit, Dave. We've known each other for a couple of years now, and I find you to be a good example of an even-headed person. So not extreme in any direction, and very compassionate. You love the Word, but you also are practical and you love people. So that being said, I want to throw some somewhat random ministry questions at you. That you might get from someone in the congregation or someone that may be listening and what they may be thinking, and I'm looking for a pastoral response. So, you ready for some?
Yeah, great, sure.
Good. Sure. So imagine someone comes to you, Dave, and says, Pastor, I've really messed up my life, destroyed my. Been struggling with alcohol addiction for years. I get off on the wagon, then off the wagon. And I just can't seem to beat that. I lost my job a year ago. What is there any hope for me? What am I going to do?
Yeah. What I'd be wanting to help the person to do, I'm not sure how I would say it. I'll tell you what I'd be thinking is I'd want to help them think of their life within the context of a different framework than the American dream. If their life is if they're thinking about the American dream and they're seeing how they measure up, it may be that there's no hope to get back on track to reaching that dream that of a certain number of kids in a certain looking house and a certain kind of family, certain kind of income. On the other hand, if the most important thing that can happen in life is to know Jesus and to become more like Him, there's never a better place to be than even just knowing those facts, because then you can start going in that direction. And so I think that's that gives so much hope. I think that can give peace. I mean, it can it can take away any chance of peace or hope if you're just trying to reach the American dream. But if you suddenly see, wow, life is about knowing God and developing a character like Him, and not only my suffering, but my mistakes and the wrong things I've done can contribute to that. It's incredible, I think, what that reframing can do. And there's hope for anybody, no matter where you are or what you've done in Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. It's never too late.
No, not at all.
You're never at a place where you say, okay, you've blown it so bad, it's over for you.
No.
You're always able to offer hope in the gospel,
hope
in Christ. That's huge. How about a pastor? I really struggle with doubts. I want to believe, but I just find myself doubting. I hear what I'm hearing from the world. I hear what I'm hearing from maybe it's a college student. With my professors, my philosophy class, and I'm doubting. I'm struggling with, does God really exist? Yeah. And if He does He really care about what's going on in this world? Yeah. It seems to be a very just naturalistic world. I'm just wrestling through these doubts.
I'd want that person to know that the doubts are normal, and possibly show them some examples of faithful people in the Bible wrestling with doubts. And point out that, like when I preach, or when you sit in a Sunday school or a ministry, we teach the truth, and we might do it in a forceful way, or at least a very confident way. But that doesn't mean that many Christians don't struggle with doubts. It might be interesting to look at what are, if this is a college student or someone that actually has some specific areas of questioning, what might those be, and maybe there'd be some specific interaction we could have about that. But I do think this is probably an area that the church is going to have to grow in, is helping people wrestle with doubts, because I think it probably already is very common as we're in an age where belief is as contested as it's ever been. We're in a secular culture and so forth. Yeah. So it's a very important issue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I think I like what you said in the beginning, that doubt is a normal part of the Christian faith, and you're working through things. Yeah. If you're not doubting anything, then you're probably not thinking through it very clearly. You know what I mean?
That's right.
You work through it and you want to arrive at the other side of doubt, but it's not as if the day that you believe all doubt is gone, and now you just walk with complete and absolute confidence. It's rather a process of working through doubts. And I think being part of a church and having a pastor to help you through things, give you recommend resources and that kind of thing, is really important. A similar situation, someone comes to you and says, Pastor, I'm a Christian, but I just feel spiritually dry. I pray. I try to pray every day. I even read the Bible, once a week. I'm trying to read it, but I just don't feel anything. I feel like the relationship maybe I had before when I was younger was more vibrant and alive, but I'm at a place now where I'm praying and I'm reading and there's just nothing.
Yeah.
Any thoughts there?
Yeah, man, this is hard stuff, but really real stuff. I mean, I think that's probably also representative of a lot of people. And one thing I'd say that person might be ahead of some others, where there might be some others who are dry spiritually, and I think what you mean by that is not feeling a lot of love for God, not feeling a lot of faith. Their faith might be really weak, not being that excited about reading the Bible or worshiping. And I think probably there's probably a number of people in every church that's true of, and yet who just totally accept that, and that's just they just kind of aren't worried about that. And so the person who is concerned about that spiritual dryness, I think that's a great start. I guess part of the answer would be keep doing what you know you should be doing. That the different things that Christians do, like reading the Bible and praying and worshiping and being in community, are God's means of grace. They're his means that he kindles faith in us. Those are just some initial thoughts, but and also I'd want to be showing a lot of compassion for that, just not making them feel like they're weird. Or that's even something that I, even as someone who's in full-time Christian work, will struggle with that at times. So I sympathize with that. Yeah.
I think also recognizing that, hey, even as a pastor, go through times of spiritual dryness. That's just what it is.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I've said this to people too. The fact that you're sitting in my office concerned is already a step away from dryness, because you're saying now that I spiritually don't want this and I want this to change. And sometimes the answer is to just keep pushing, keep plugging through it. You're in a dry season right now, and that'll change over time. So, how about pastor? And this is meant I'm sure you've gotten. I've gotten this. I'm just sick and tired of arguing. I want to just end this marriage. I just want to end this marriage. I'm done with it. But I don't want to, in a sense, because that's why I'm coming to you. Any advice in that direction?
Wow. Well, I
didn't say these were going to be easy questions.
Yeah,
Dave.
no. Probably a lot of people. There are certainly a lot of people in our towns, in our cities, that's where they are right now. And
That's right.
And my first thought is that I have a lot of compassion for you, and you've surely gone through so much, just tons of incredible pain. And so for one thing, I'd want to minister to you and tell you that I care about you, and more importantly, that God loves you. And we got to get to praying, because this is going to take God's intervention in the marriage. I think for the most part, in any counseling situation, the main thing I'm going to do is listen, and not try to be too prescriptive. And I'm mainly going to listen and show that I care and love them and pray with them, and maybe send them home with one truth, one homework assignment. I think it could actually be just not very helpful at all to come in and see, okay, and now I understand the whole problem. Let me fix half of it today, and next week we'll finish the other half. Like that's just not going to go anywhere. So I guess I'm going to try and do little, but just try to be there for the person. Those are some of the main things that I would do. I don't know if you're wanting me to give that advice to the person watching who's in that.
I think that would be great.
If you're that person who your marriage is struggling, I would say talk to a mature believer, talk to your pastor, and walk through that with other mature believers holding you up. Whether it's a small group leader, someone else, maybe a family member, maybe a mom or a dad who's a mature believer, some people that you could link arms with and could give you strength and wisdom even in the dark where you can't see, and lean on them. That's what I would recommend.
What I find too, Dave, is we get people that come at all different stages of this. So certainly we have people that come premarital, and are saying, hey, I want to get married. And there's stuff you can do there and say, okay, let's prepare you for that, some premarital counseling, pastoral counseling, and let's talk through what marriage is going to look like. Let's prepare you for some of the struggles that come, and all the blessings, the whole picture. Yeah. That's a fun stage. And then you get some people who are newlywed who come in and are facing some struggles, and there's some things you can do to kind of set things going in the right direction there. Yeah. And then there are people who come very late in the process where they feel like their marriage is almost done. Yeah. And they're looking for help. And there's some things you can do, and there's some hope. And I've seen, I'm sure you could say that, probably say the same. I've seen God do some great things with marriages that, from all outside perspective, were finished. Yeah. And yet God steps in and He does something. Yeah. And then certainly, I've seen a lot of people who have come post-divorce, and I think at that point you make clear this grace and forgiveness, and that you're not broken. You still redemption there for you, and come be part of the church. And so there's all different stages. But I find to get a lot of marriage questions. Is that true of you as a pastor?
For some reason I have not got a ton of marriage questions over these years. Okay. Not sure why. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you give good marriage advice, Dave. So when they come, that'll be good. So, a different question, Pastor. I feel like I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not a religious person. I get more out of being out in nature. Yeah. I get more out of kayaking down a river, hiking through up a mountain in the woods, than I do with being in church. So I'm really not interested in church. I'm just more interested in a general being a spiritual person. Yeah. Any advice for someone like that?
Yeah. Man, I've heard those exact words before, and I guess I don't have any crafty, any creative ways to engage that. I think I would want to befriend you and love you, but I would want to point you to the fact that Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. I guess one thing that occurs to me as I say those words is, that spirituality includes a feeling of peace and a feeling of gratitude and a feeling of appreciation for the earth and the creation. But there are other significant things as well, like truth and the reality of who God is. And if there is a God, and if it is possible to know Him, then I guess a walk in the woods isn't enough. That if He really has made Himself known in Jesus, then enjoying a canoe trip, as good as that is, it still is missing the boat.
Yeah, that's good. I've expressed it this way before, that spirituality in a sense is the hunger, but Christ is the food.
That's really good.
So being spiritual is great. In pursuing that, you feel the desire. You recognize that just like I said, the American dream, though good in many ways, as a system, isn't everything. There's more to it, and you want more to it. But look to Christ as the food there, for the non-believers. So another question that kind of relates to the local church. Somebody says, I've been really hurt by people in the church growing up. I'm a pastor. I grew up in a church. I felt like there was a lot of hypocrisy there, a lot of conflict and fighting, gossip kind of happens. So I'm hesitant to get back involved in a church family. I'm a believer. I believe in Christ. But I don't want to get involved in a church. It's too painful. Thoughts there?
I was just teaching Sunday school last week, and the opening question that I asked the group was, if Jesus didn't think of the church, if Jesus did everything He did, but He never thought of the idea of the church, what would you be missing in your life, in your Christian life? How would that have impacted you? and the people there, who of course are their church goers, you know, but one of the women said, you know, I'd be missing everything. I don't think I'd be a Christian today. And some of the takeaways from that are, you know, that for one thing, the church is Jesus' idea. And it's Jesus' idea to care for his sheep, for the people that are his followers. It's the means by which they grow up and mature and become more like him. And it's his strategy. It's his, you know, it's his workshop. It's where he wanted to do what he wants to do in our lives. And so I think most Christians have had bad experiences in churches because they're full of people who are sinners like us, you know. We do hurt each other, just like we hurt each other in our marriages and in our families. But the church is Jesus' idea, and we commit ourselves to the healthiest local church near us, and we trust him that he's going to use it in our lives. But it's an essential part of the Christian life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It kind of, in some ways, reminds me of your answer to the first question too, the previous question, because out in the kayak,
yeah,
there's no relational challenge.
Yeah.
You know, you're on your own, so you're not going to have to deal with conflict. You're not going to have to deal, but you're also going to be missing the aspect of love and service. Yeah. And I think it was C.S. Lewis who said, "Love anyone or anything, even a dog, and you risk the danger of pain." Yeah. Because if the dog dies and you love it, it's hurtful. People, you know, but you also miss all the blessings that come with relationships. Yeah. So it's a risk-reward situation in a sense that being part of a church, you're going to gain a lot, but yes, you are also definitely open yourself up to hurt and pain. So, how about a question on forgiveness? So, you know, Pastor, from a woman's perspective, I was abused by my stepfather, and I struggle with bitterness. I can't let it go. I know what Jesus says about forgiveness, but I'm just angry, and I just this is starting to creep into other areas of my life, my marriaging and relationships in the church. How do I learn to forgive? Thoughts there, Dave?
Wow, these are really hard, and I think maybe again, I think an answer that tries to solve the problem right away could minimize the depth of the hurt. And so I would think that a person with that struggle, and there's probably many around us, it's going to be a lifelong thing. There's not, if a pastor is going to try and give you a solution in one session, it's not going to work. It's going to be a lifelong project that the Holy Spirit's going to do in your life with other people and with His Word but I do think that there is hope for a person in that situation, for a woman in that situation, or a man or whatever. And it is possible to learn to forgive. And part of it's going to be seeing our sinful responses, even to our suffering, and learning, wow, I was forgiven. And that helps me have compassion on those who sin against me as I see, wow, I've been forgiven so much. But that's just part of it, and I know it's not at all a pat answer that go home and it's solved, but I think that's going to be part of it.
Yeah. You know, I've heard forgiveness is not like we were saying before about doubts. Forgiveness is not a one-time thing either.
Yeah.
You know, it's yes, you may come to a point where there's a turning point in your forgiveness, where you're releasing, in a sense, the bitterness, but it's going to be still an ongoing thing where when it comes to mind, you're still learning to forgive, and you're still learning to move on. Yeah. But forgiveness is a powerful thing. I mean, I think it's a huge part of the Christian life. I mean, we are forgiven, obviously, and we forgive it as we've been forgiven. And bitterness is, you know, I've heard it described as hurting myself because somebody hurt me. You know, it doesn't make any sense. I'm going to continue to harm myself because of the harm that someone else has done. Yeah. But I really like your answer, Pastor Dave, that you can't expect someone to come in your office for 10 minutes, 15 minutes of counseling and have it all fixed. You know? So these are ongoing things. And a lot of them are worked out, when you say, in the life of the church. Yeah. That it's not even just the pastoral counseling. It's as they get to know others in the congregation who maybe have similar situations, who have worked through them. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. Particularly, I find in ministering to women that there are other women in the church, older women, spiritually older, maybe younger in age, but have gone through a lot of this and are able to minister to them on a one-to-one or in a small group setting. Yeah. And that's I think one of the powers, we're just talking about the life of the church, that yes, there's hurt and conflict and slander and sometimes hypocrisy in a church, but again, there's the love and the care and the fellowship of a congregation that comes as the benefit. So, and then one more. So you've done great, Pastor Dave here. Especially around Christmas time, although like I said, this may air after Christmas, a lot of people, Christmas is the hardest time of the year. They don't look forward to it with joy because it's the time that the this is those who have passed away in their life, it really comes to the forefront. Their absence is felt. So somebody who comes to you and says, Pastor, I'm just really struggling with grief. I'm really struggling with the loss of my husband or my wife or maybe a son or daughter. And especially at this time of the year, families getting together, everybody seems to be supposed to be happy and celebrating. But this is, I'm having a real hard time. Maybe this is one, Pastor Dave, to address the camera and maybe some that would be listening that would do that. So,
I'm going to have to talk from my own experience, and actually I don't have a great tragedy to share or sorrow in my life, but I will say this, that when I see a tragedy, like in my church, there's nothing for me that makes my faith seem more real. It helps me. When things are going really well, then I can be distracted by all sorts of things on the internet and the television and whatever. But when tragedy strikes, I realize how great our salvation is in Jesus. And I just wonder, so I'm just thinking of myself when those days come, when I suffer tragedy, and then Easter rolls around, Christmas rolls around. What I'm going to try and do is focus on the heart of my faith, focus on Jesus, and hope and pray that God will help me experience that He is enough for me. And again, I don't want to be trite or give a pat answer, because I know it can shred your soul apart, these tragedies. But that's just some initial thoughts from my heart on that.
Well, thanks for Dave. These are tough questions, like you said, and this is I think a little glimpse into the life of a pastor. There's again great joys, great difference. I think one of the early on in my own ministry, someone I had grown close to, my wife and I both grown close to, was a single mom of two young girls, and she got leukemia and passed away, It was just striking to me. Say, this is what it means to be a pastor: is to walk a family through this, to walk her through this, and then to see her girls through this. And it was striking that wow, this is as we said, seminary prepares you for theology, which is very, very important. But some of the what's going to be worked out in the practice in the life of the churches can only be gained through experience. So, and one last question. So, Pastor Dave, are you planning on staying in New England and in Danville, and maybe even right through to retirement if the Lord wills?
Yep. No plans to go anywhere.
Good. Yeah. Well, you're a blessing to have here. And if any folks are in the area and are in southern New Hampshire and looking for a church, I think Danville Baptist would be a great place.
Yep.
So great to have you, Dave. I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you, Rick.
Absolutely. And thank you to our viewers. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this will air, as I said, in January. And what a blessing it is. The time, again, to talk about ministry, ethics, and current events, to meet some of our church leaders and missionaries. And hope you tune in next time. Thanks a lot.